Welcome back. This is the third rhetoric review talk session without any necessary format. And today we're going to be talking about the obvious, elephant in the room for those of you watching in time, but which for those of you watching in the future is the death of Charlie Kirk, major right-wing politics commentator. So we'll be talking a little bit about that, some things I've seen online, which kind of makes me very lose faith in a lot of people. The establishment, and then a little bit about democracy, I guess. So let's get right into it. So I hope you guys listen to this. It'll be a pretty interesting discussion, I hope. And yeah, let's get right into it. So I guess it's good to start by putting out that initial assessment that, political violence is not a good thing, right? And also that in the past, that violence has been the main method of political reformation. Not in the USA, though, notably. And I guess to it's a bit of a difficult thing to say because on one hand I want to respond to the like can't say the word here but like the unintelligent individuals who are celebrating the death of someone. On the other hand, I also want to talk about the technical sense of what this represents and what it got me thinking about more deeply. So I'll do both. So first, oh my god, voice crack. So I'll start by talking about what it revealed to me more about the establishment and then I'll address some of the things I've seen online, which of course isn't, like indicative of most of the people in America. But then again, the fact that people exist and have loud voices is one thing. Okay, so to start, I'm guessing most people know who Charlie Kirk is, right? Right-wing influencer, talk show host, Turning Point USA Foundation founder, I guess, and a probably the most influential right wing figure for the last decade or so when it comes to the right wing backlash or the slight shift of the pendulum to the right side that we've been seeing for the last few years, I would say, since more or less since when COVID ended, right? And the main distinction I want to make is between, I guess, gun violence and politically motivated gun violence, which is two different things. And the first thing is the quote that people use, right? People kill people, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Which is both true and false. Obviously, it would take someone very mentally ill, deranged to go kill someone when it comes, especially when it comes to stuff like mass shootings, school shootings, right? Absolutely terrible, tragic events. At the same time, right? That stuff is only possible, at least the mass level. It's only possible due to the vehicle of which the violence is being distributed, which is the gun itself, right? For example, you have like a lot of knives and like machetes in Britain, for example, and you hear a lot of homicides, bad stories, getting shanked up and such. But you never really hear you really can't stab more than like one, two, three people at once because once the first guy that gets downed from a sneak attack, you just get out of there. Right? It's not really the same with the gun, and I can see the argument for why we want to restrict guns because while people are the ones committing the acts of violence, that is only made possible by the presence of firearms, and especially again like what Democrats say, the assault style weapons. And obviously Republicans say that no gun should be infringed because then why stop, and because that's a precedent to be stopped at, whatever. But there's a significant difference because in any case of gun violence, outside of like obviously self-defense, homicide type stuff, or manslaughter cases, right, with accidents, you can usually assume that the person what do I keep using? It's like medical terms. The person committing the crime of shooting a gun at an innocent is probably mentally deranged, right? On one hand, you have people who are very mentally ill, perhaps insane, unhappy with their life, and zero outlook on life, and therefore they choose to take it out on those lesser than them, more innocent than them. Often this happens to be children or people who are defenseless, right? That's why people go to festivals and places where people aren't going to be armed or light security. That's changed in schools as of late, obviously, due to these events, and by as of late, I mean a few years. But it's like it's a general rule that you can usually assume that a person committing these horrific acts of violence are going to be mentally ill, and there's no like more like deep purpose outside of perhaps the ramblings in their journal about why they're committing these acts, right? It's very rarely something justified. It cannot be justified, rather, and it's often out of insanity, right? Pure insanity, schizophrenia, not literal schizophrenia, but believing the wrong things that clearly aren't true to the rest of us. And that's easily condemnable. It's very easy to condemn, and I don't think anyone on either side is saying that this stuff should be normalized, right? And that's one of the good hopes, is that we can agree that a lot of mentally ill people who are being given access to guns are inadvertently becoming the ones shooting others, and often students as well, right? So when it comes to the background checks, I believe that yes, there are things that we can improve, but also how we improve it matters on how we diagnose mental illness and recognizing danger signs, which I am not an expert in, but I hope that that is the direction we go in. For again, people kill people, guns don't kill people. Still, guns are the mode where bad people are able to kill a lot of people. And of course, you can argue that even one person dying is bad. The mass element doesn't really matter. But for the sake of the argument and where people talk about gun violence nowadays, let's go with that point. So we've established that point, which is that gun violence, when it comes to like single homicides or mass shootings, usually happen due to either bad environments, mental illness, or again, self-defense, right? And the clear point about this is that those types of shootings don't necessarily have agendas. There's nothing more than, again, the ramblings of an insane person, self-defense, or simple violence without any mind. What I believe separates Charlie Kirk's death and any political deaths that is happening, including the Minnesota lawmakers, three of them, I believe, yeah. What separates those from simple, homicides, or again, terrible school shootings, is that there's a direct agenda behind this. In America, things don't change through violence or revolution. Things change through process. There's a process that we've created, and the process is called the US government. And that's how change happened. That's how agendas are changed. And I understand with culture it's different, because obviously culture is decided more in the private sector, which is, like public life rather than government. But still, we don't change through violence. We change through free speech. And, obviously this wasn't a simple mass murdering where Charlie Kirk was caught in the crossfire. This was a targeted snipe, hit in the neck, carotid artery, I believe, made by someone probably mentally ill, but also with a potential agenda. Because if they wanted to kill those who are lesser than them, that 6'5" man, political commentator, with all the security around him, is not going to be the person. If you want to cause damage and harm to others, it's the students standing around them. Him. And yet, the shooter chose to go for Charlie Kirk. And why is that? It's because there is no other reason there is the most possible reason for this, is that it has to be politically motivated. And that's what makes it different from any other type of death. Every other death when that happens is a primary indicator of mental health issues and the inability for people to be kept away from dangerous firearms, and also state the danger they pose to themselves. In this case, it's not that. This is a clear attack made politically, not to express one's own, insanity or whatever, because it could have been worse, and thankful that it wasn't, but it could have been worse. But it had a clear vision to it. We're trying to bypass the American system of free speech and trying to trump others' free speech with more free speech by adding in violence. And even if this wasn't the purpose of the shooter, the way some people online, as we will see in, maybe not shortly, but in a little bit, are reacting, are reflective of this idea, where they are unable to make the distinction between mass shootings of mental illness and politically motivated shootings, or assassinations rather. And again, I would condemn this no matter which side it was, because political assassinations do not help anyone, and rather they are a symptom of people being unable to win a war of ideas and intellectualism, and instead choosing to take the violence route. But why is it different that it's Charlie Kirk? So that was my initial impression, right? Obviously, he's different from like kids being shot. It sucks to say, it's terrible to say, but he's different. And again, that's because of the purpose, why he was shot. And I'm sure we will learn more as more information comes out about the shooter once they catch the guy, right? Or maybe they do by the time you were watching this. But assuming it is politically motivated, which is very hard to believe that it's not, then what are they trying to do? The purpose of political assassinations is to stop the amount of power that the person is amassing, to prevent change of the status quo, or to prevent someone stopping you from rising up. And so I thought about it. Who is Charlie Kirk? He is the most influential, in my opinion, right-wing influencer. It probably is the most influential, to be fair, with the Turning Point Foundation and such, and how popular he's on social media. But he is a major public figure. That is to say, he's not only, an online podcaster, influencer. He has, he's on cable, I believe. He has a direct line to the Trump administration. He's on social media. He has captured the minds and hearts of the American youth. Again, ever since, probably going back further, but ever since COVID. And his role in engineering, or at least steering on the right-wing backlash to a certain degree, is not to be, ignored. Right? There's a clear shift, especially for men, but in general, back towards not a 50-50 split, but it is now significantly more acceptable to be conservative or right-leaning in public, due to the fact that more people are being exposed to this content, and therefore the collective zeitgeist is shifting away from hard, I don't want to say wokeism, but political correctness. And so let's think. So I had to really think about this, but I searched as well. There is no equivalent to Charlie Kirk on the left wing. So you might call him like moderate right wing, you might call him far right wing, but he is definitely right wing, right? Let's just call him right wing for now. There is no equivalent to Charlie Kirk on the left. Someone young, impactful, actually liked by his side, and not simply laughing stock, which Charlie can be in some cases. But anyways, the point is, someone as influential as him, as young as him, and someone with as much, power, I guess, when it comes to influence others. And the answer is there is no equivalent. There is no parallel to Charlie when it comes to the left. And so I thought about that, because Turning Point USA, the foundation itself, is in, a turning point. Something has to change, meaning that the status quo is not satisfactory, therefore being directly anti-establishment. And so even though the Trump administration is in power right now, all three levers of the government, the executive, legislative, and the judicial, being under conservative or conservative-leaning positions, despite all of that, Charlie Kirk still runs Turning Point USA, and is still not the establishment. And that's kind of crazy to say, right? How can a Republican government be anti-establishment, or be not the establishment? And it's weird, because they really aren't. And then possibly that could be because of the news media and journos, right, being possibly politically motivated. But Charlie Kirk is not the establishment. There exists an establishment above the government, basically what I'm saying. And that the establishment is, at least in America, the cool part of America is it's kind of the people, right? And the news outlets that control the people by, having headline journalism and misrepresenting data and such. And this goes for both sides, of course. But right now, the current establishment is the leftoids, right? The rightoids have never had the media in their control, really, in America. And so I really thought about it. Who could be in history a parallel to Charlie Kirk? And then it hit me. Who is someone who went against the establishment, was rising in popular support, managed to have powerful connections in government, perhaps not the establishment, but anyways, there we go. Held rallies, had massive influence. Oh, there you have it. Martin Luther King. And you might say, right, it's a crazy connection. And initially, I thought about this, I bounced this idea off some friends and such. But it's not that crazy of an assessment to make. Because ultimately, when it comes to the function they had when it came to changing um, society in America, it's not that different. Anti-establishment, trying to change something culturally or socially, also had some government influence because obviously government and politics is downstream of culture, and also was assassinated for his views for XYZ reasons. And I think that's really interesting because even on the right, there is no figure such as Charlie. You might say, like Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh, and these people are strictly mostly online. Right? Maybe Ben Shapiro is a close second, right? But he's also like lost favor because he's been around in the game for so long and such. But it's really interesting because this to count him as a normal death just because he is like not like an actual politician doesn't make it not a political assassination, which I find really interesting because political assassinations have historically in America just not been good. They've not been productive. They've not been celebrated because they can't be. You can't have political assassinations to keep a democratic system. Because the answer to bad free speech, if you choose to believe it as such, it's not violence. It's more free speech. If you don't like Charlie Kirk's ideas, start his found, and you believe that he's not that it's bright of a man, start your own anti-Turning Point USA Foundation. Become as big as him, become as successful as him, capture the minds and hearts of the American youth. But there is no person doing that. And that's the strange part, really, about this whole debacle, right? And that's one of the reasons why I believe that this made me realize more about what's reflected, which is the fact that the Trump administration and the Republicans still aren't the establishment. They might get stuff done politically and such, sure. There are so much attacks going against him, and there's a general mistrust of Trump in the moderate right, too much love on Trump in the far right, the MAGAs. Again, general mistrust of Trump, maybe a little bit more on the moderate left, and then a absolute, writhing hatred of Trump on the far left. So it's like 75, if it was truly 25, 25, 25, 25% of the spectrum, right? Most people do not like Trump. And, a variety of reasons, he's not a really likable guy. I can see all these different opinions, and they make sense to me. But still, the point is that, like, he's still not the establishment quite yet. And because it's not really simply about, like, oh, I don't like his policies or whatever. Him as a character is simply questionable. With that being said, let's get into some of these, like, comments I've seen that are not only, a bit sick in the head, but just doesn't make sense much. And apparently I can't find it or something. Ah, I see now. Okay. Yeah, alright. I'll get to that in a second. But another thing I wanted to talk about today was, in fact, establishmentism. So I guess on the matter of what Charlie was talking about, and this has raised again more interested in politics as of late, because again, Charlie Kirk being talked about by all sorts of people, maybe aren't even interested in politics, is indicative of how important he was and how big of an event this really is. So here is a quick reel, and it's reversed, but it says that conservatives have never been on the right side of history, by the way, BTW. And the comments are some nothing burgers and talking about the idea of the Civil War, the whole party switch thing. Whatever. The idea itself is very interesting because it paints a picture as obviously, things have changed. Progress happens over time, right? Maybe slowly, maybe quick sometimes in some eras, but progress happens, and therefore conservatives must be wrong. So we talked about this on this channel before, right? The pendulum idea. Or like how parties play by each other. So I think it's interesting. So like if you look at it from a purely historical lens, maybe true. This might look true if you zoom out all the way. And to your average person who just does the first level of thinking, it's true, obviously, right? Oh, the conservatives wanted to keep, I don't know, racism or something. Let's just throw it out there, right? Hypothetical. And then the progressive wanted to change it. Yay! Okay. And then it changed, right? But the neat part here is, as we've talked about on this channel many times before, is that not every idea that's progressive is good. There's a lot of like actual shit out there, and that's always been the case. And so, as we've talked about on this channel before, there's this political dynamic that goes on, right? Progressives push forward, and conservatives are necessary to be like, wait a minute, is this a good idea or not? And this idea only passes through when the progressives are able to at least get enough support to convince the conservatives, or at least a certain number of them, that yes, in fact, this is a good idea. And if you can't pass that check, well, then it's not a good idea. And again, this isn't directly related to Charlie Kirk, but then the whole idea of conservatism being inherently wrong is just kind of crazy, because there's a lot of ass political opinions from the progressives, right? Like the ones that want to like create like the extreme far lefts, right? The ones that want to like do crazy reparations and all these. There's probably stuff crazier out there that I'm not even aware of. But there's a lot of ideas out there that aren't productive and that aren't, useful, but those are denied not on the basis of violence. Okay, this is where it connects. Those aren't denied by conservatives on the basis of violence against crazy far left progressives, or usually aren't in today's America, but instead they are shot down, they are spoken against by mere ease. If it's that bad of an idea, I don't need to say that much or put that much effort in. It's just your idea sucks. Why would we do a communist dictatorship in America? Go away. I don't know, Joe. And that's how it is, right? Because bad ideas are easy to refute. Controversial ideas, on the other hand, are hard to refute. Oh, this is where it all ties in. Okay, I'm making the connection why I wanted to bring that reel up. And I don't blame that guy. His other content's whatever. But as I was saying, right? Like, there's good ideas, bad ideas. Bad ideas are easy to refute. Good ideas are hard to refute. And because they're hard to refute, it's very easy to do political violence against them. And this is one of the problems that a lot of dictators had in the past, is because, like, bad governance and dictatorship is very easy to spot. Like, if I tell everyone to melt their farming tools to make the iron quotas, and then we don't have farming tools to farm, well, no shit, I'm gonna get blamed for it if I'm Mao Zedong or whatever. But then I don't want the blame, so right? And that's the problem, right? We can't have that. We don't want that in America, because we believe that the American system is good, and that if ideas are truly bad, if Charlie was truly evil, then it should be really easy to refute him. But no one is out there doing it. There is no equivalent anti-Charlie Kirk. There are a bunch of people whining their asses off on the internet, or Hassan Piker doing whatever, the New York deserved 9/11 shit, and there's no actual like establishment response. And that's one of the things that I learned from this. There is no liberal. I hate saying liberal. I feel bad for them. There is no left wing equivalent to Charlie Kirk, because they are the establishment, and there is no response. There is no actual response. And that's why I believe this whole situation is sad. Anyone who supports his death simply because he failed to, I don't know, swear fealty to the kids dying in Palestine, it simply doesn't make sense to me. Because what's the expectation that people are held to? And again, if you like, I mean, it's pretty obvious to most people, and I hope those watching this channel is pretty clear to them as well, that like, if this applies to both sides, there is no standard for what makes a political assassination correct. Just think about it. Like, for like for a right winger, right? They believe that like abortion clinics are literally killing babies, and that's really evil. So we should shoot Kamala Harris. That doesn't make sense. She's not the one administering the abortions. She has opinions, which she's entitled to, maybe wrong opinions to these right wingers, but that doesn't warrant, assassination. What it does warrant is someone like Charlie coming up, Turning Point Foundation, and preaching his ideals, his or her, whoever chooses to come up. And so all this general unhappiness about, oh my god, Charlie was so evil and such, that I'm seeing in all these comment sections, which I wish I took more screenshots of, honestly. But all of that is just an indicator of, like, maybe it's because they are the establishment and the media already supports him. There is no one similar to him, who wields as much influence. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's it. That's my take on the whole Charlie situation. I had other stuff planned, but then I realized that like I kind of maybe addressed all of them. I mean, if this is, I mean, no one really watches this long anyways, but if someone does, I guess I could keep it around for a few more minutes to think. So establishment, political violence, what's happening recently. But it is kind of crazy though. If Trump died, then what would have happened? And what's going to occur from this? We really don't know. This is only like 1 day deep into the issue, and we don't know who the shooter is. We don't know what their cause or motivation was, and therefore we can't really make any strong distinctions. However, the nature of this text does not indicate someone mentally ill in the same way a mass shooter is. It indicates someone mentally ill with a certain level of malice against a political agenda. And it worries me that we come into this point where people are talking about not only that it was a good thing that it happened, people are talking about avenging him, which doesn't make too much sense either, does it now? Because, the answer to violence is not more violence, it's, turning the other cheek, if you're really Christian, and letting the other side expose themselves. But the problem is, people on, like, both the left and right, they've been exposing themselves, more so the left, because, again, they are the establishment. They've been exposing themselves for, like, ages now, but nothing's being done, because, again, they are the establishment. Like, where people can, like, come out and say, like, crazy-ass shit on Twitter, nothing happens to them, mostly because it's Twitter, or X, I guess, now. But regardless, yeah, like, and again, like, lowering half-mast doesn't make sense either. That's going a bit too far. It's going to turn into a nothing burger, most likely. And if it does turn into something, we hope it's, like, less political violence, but that's not going to happen because of this. So the most we can hope for is a nothing burger where this doesn't turn into something crazy conflict. Because ultimately, we want stability. And we want to be able to have conversations with others, not through violence, but through discourse. And it worries me too that, like, the loud minority online as well who are speaking up saying, like, it's really good or whatever, like, what the like, let's use our, like, critical thinking skill. I actually saw a place, Dean Withers, the like that one white boy blonde debate bro, he was saying how, like, this isn't about sides and how political violence was bad. There's this one Instagram thing I watch or follow, the Watchmen Party, I think. I don't follow it because I like their content, but I follow it to be unbiased, or at least see what the other side is saying. It's the left-wing place, typically leans a bit Marxist, I guess, with their rhetoric and stuff and the stuff they post, but they're saying how, like, that he's wrong, and then Dean Withers is just grifting because he wants attention, which is honestly true for most of the shit he does. But saying that implies that he's wrong in some way in this, and this isn't a bipartisan issue of political violence. It turns into whataboutisms with, like, oh, but what about the kids dying in Palestine? Why aren't we crying for them? Well, no shit. But the difference is that someone's trying to subvert the American system with political assassinations. If you want to be objective, that's the truth, right? If you want to be emotional, you can pray for him, whatever, which is honestly fine. I believe in that as well, especially if you liked him. But again, whataboutisms are stupid, and implying that it's okay because he had bad opinions and because he was leading people in bad ways, that's a different opinion as well. Words aren't violence. That's the thing, right? Because if I say, like, oh my god, blah 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 blah, right? This bad stuff, abortion is bad, and what else did I say that's crazy? Let's stick with abortion is bad. Oh my god, he is against the autonomy of women. We should kill him for his opinion. What? Dude, that's not how it goes, man. Yeah, but realistically, this shouldn't turn into anything more, and everyone should hope it doesn't. Retribution's stupid. Continuing violence is stupid. But also forgetting it's stupid. Like, we need to at least remember this as probably the biggest political assassination in the last 10 years in America. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, or if you have any comments, discussion points. Do you think that Charlie Kirk can be compared to MLK in terms of his influence? Probably like less influence, right? But also like internet. There's more people around now. Who knows? Anyways, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think. And that's all we have for today. Bye bye.